Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be talking about the latest update for Scorn. The majority of the update is them trying to explain why updates are so infrequent. They say that the reason they're so infrequent is because they need to carefully select what they show to avoid spoilers, and what they show needs to be polished and prepared to be shown, which takes up time. I would be under the assumption that the time it would take up would be perhaps a few hours at most. And if they are preparing and polishing this, then technically they are getting work on the game done while they prepare the update, since it would need to be polished up for the game in general. And yet, according to them, having done the math, it will eat up 2 weeks to 4 weeks of development time. So a single update costs essentially a month at worst. I quite honestly find this very difficult to believe, and I have suggested much easier ways to make updates. But I suppose we should move on to the new information about the game itself. Unlike their previous update, they didn't post a video on YouTube, and I don't know how to download videos from Kickstarter, so I will show you single pictures from the video they posted. As you can see, it's a video of Scorn Guy's arm and hand rotting away over time, until it's nothing but quite literally skin and bone, with the bone visible. According to the update, this is an animation that'll be seen throughout the game, and not just in a single part, which leads some people to speculate that it could be a way to show how loss of health is affecting Scorn Guy. Since the game doesn't have any HUD elements, it'll need to convey losing health by other means. I would like to point out, especially with this mostly healthy hand here, that it doesn't seem to be the best Scorn Guy's hand could be. If you notice, not just his hands are dirty, but also in the left arm, you can see there's a patch of it that's covered up completely by smooth, light, rather glossy skin. It's like he has a complete epidermis on that area alone, while the rest reveals veins and the structure of muscle underneath it. Additionally, at the very bottom, you can see what looks like visible bruising on his hand, or on his arm. And this bruising eventually becomes the norm as far as color is concerned at the end. This could explain the discrepancies as far as why Scorn Guy's arms and hands have different amount of skin on them, depending on whether you're looking at screenshots or certain trailers or playing the demo. Perhaps he, at his healthiest, has all his skin on his hands, then midway through he starts to show muscles and veins, and then at his worst, it's rotting to the core. And yet, it is not Scorn Guy's arms that are the most interesting thing about this video to me, but instead what's behind his arms, because judging by the color and the assets, this looks suspiciously like the areas that were seen in the pre-alpha version of the game. In fact, the wall textures are very similar to what you saw in that first clip. If you look at the bottom of the arm video, you can see the sort of webbing pattern that was frequently used in the pre-alpha stuff. Though it is worth pointing out that in the video, the webbing pattern is symmetrical on both sides of that irrigation canal in the center. The same sort of ridges and indentations can be seen, while the webbing in all the pre-alpha pictures looks more randomized. One thing I was trying to figure out was the structures in the background, and I sort of came up with this. Yeah, I know it's a bit of an eyesore, but I tried to distinguish each major shape by a specific color, the webbing stuff being yellow. I considered there were sort of arches that I decided to highlight in red, and some structure wrapping around the arches in a more vivid or vibrant red. There seems to be two separate machines behind those arches, one that I highlighted in blue, and that machine has these weird structures on either side of it that I highlighted in lime green. And the second machine I highlighted in darker green and has this weird structure coming off of it that I highlighted in purple. Compare and contrast with the actual video if you want. The problem is that the background in the video is so blurry, its shapes sort of blend together. And when looking back at the video and examining it with an even closer eye, I sort of noticed that the machine looks familiar. It's a bit changed from what it was before, but I gotta say it looks a lot like the mold machine that was one of the pre-alpha assets that were posted on ArtStation. You can even see that sort of rigid bar in the video, as well as what looks like some claws poking out. It's possible that the thing wrapping around what I thought was an archway or a pillar is actually that metal structure to the far left wrapping around it. Now consider the name closely, Mold Machine, and then look on the ground, all that crap just scattered about. That crap looks a lot like something we've seen in the pre-alpha stuff. Specifically, this entity known as Mold Man. It has the same color, it has the same shape, it has the same sort of weird looking crap within it, minus of course the arms and legs sticking out. The problem is that when answering a backer question on Kickstarter, one of the developers has stated that Mold Man will not be returning to the game. And additionally, in the video clips of Mold Man from the pre-alpha trailer, it looks like that the entirety of his mold sack is just about as high as Scorn Guy is. On the picture, the sacks around it look a little bit smaller than they do in the video, though there's no real good way to actually judge the size. It could possibly end up being that Mold Man will not return to Scorn, but we will see these mold things that are utilized in some way or were utilized in the past and are now there in the environment to sort of illuminate the history of the Scorn world through environmental storytelling. Who knows? But I found it very interesting that there's sort of a hint of this pre-alpha entity that was stated to no longer be in the game. So that would explain the first machine, but what about the second one, the one closest to the door? To be honest, I don't know. I would perhaps speculate it could be this Jacuzzi asset, as it's called, at the very back, which would make sense if the mold machine asset was indeed updated and used for this hallway. But the image is so blurry and the thing so far away and blended in with the environment that there really is no telling. It'll take a better eye than I have to discern it. The second thing the developers have shown us is a walk cycle for a new creature. People have wanted to see new creatures for a while, and now we finally get one, and boy is it a sexy beast, am I right? Well, jokes aside, the developers have pointed out that there's no scale for it, but have stated that it is bigger than the creatures we've seen so far. The ones we've seen so far aren't that tall, the tallest going up perhaps to Scorn Guy's waist, while it's actually walking and not laying down on the ground dying. Which means that this guy would be as tall as Scorn Guy's midsection, or perhaps even far taller than Scorn Guy actually is. We have seen one creature that is visibly taller than Scorn Guy, though only in a silhouette, and clearly not the same bodily structure as one from the update. And we don't really know how tall the thing from the pod in the teaser trailer is compared to Scorn Guy, though I assume the developers were not thinking of him when writing that comment. In any case, we get a glimpse at another quadrupedal structure, one that I've tried to visualize what the front of it looks like based on its walk cycle. And yes, its face would indeed look something like an ass, or a pair of tits, or a set of testicles, or whatever. This is a Giger-inspired game after all. Some things to take note of is the very severe curvature of its back. It kinda looks like a centaur if the front horse legs were removed, and then the actual human arms were then repurposed as the front legs. Another interesting thing is that the ridge running from its head down its back grows wider the closer to the front of it gets, which is possibly explained by the fact that it needs to be wide in order to support the very clearly heavy looking flappy structures that makes up its head. It has no visible genitalia, similar to all the other creatures we've seen so far, so how it reproduces must be very different than life on Earth, though that is not in any way surprising considering how we've seen reproduction in other things in Scorn. It doesn't look like it has any facial structure, which would make how it sees and navigates something very different than animals on Earth. Then again, this is not very different than what we've seen before. All the enemies in the demo, for example, have no visible eyes or mouth or anything like that. Now, is it a friend? Is it a foe? I don't know. It's really not easy to get an idea just from the walk cycle. In some ways, in some twisted way, it kind of reminds me of like a bull or a cow. And considering this is what the Scorn devs think a bear looks like, it might actually end up being called that. In any case, that's about all I could gather from this update as far as lore searching and detail hunting is concerned. Perhaps next update, however long it'll take, you won't want to lose an entire month of development just to post a few short clips. Whenever it comes, maybe there'll be more pre-alpha stuff. Maybe we'll see that creature more finished. Maybe we'll see more of Scorn Guy's body. Who knows? Until that day comes, I hope you enjoyed the video, that I gave you something to think about and otherwise entertained you. Take care.